A dream is a wish a baby makes.
And what a terrifying little baby it was.
What a terrifying little baby it was. Alasdair, hello.
Hello, it's for a swig of coffee. Not an opportune moment. I only had as long as hello. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I've been surprised here in the UK. It's a bank holiday weekend. And these bank holiday weekends, they keep sneaking up on me. And I'm like, oh, bloody hell, we get Monday off.
I know, they keep on coming on. This is the one bank holiday that I actually did plan. I'm actually at my parents' today in a slightly echoey spare room, so apologies if that affects the audio. But it means that it's funny, for the second year in a row, for episode 7 of Doctor Who, I've watched it at my parents' house, which is just a really random fact about my life.
How interesting. Strange that it happened twice. That's a coincidence.
That's a coincidence.
Yeah, come
it's
on.
like somebody wished it.
It is. Oh my God.
Oh, God.
Well...
I can't bite the bullet anymore. This episode has been divisive online.
It has. I was like, how do we lead into this? It has been a really interesting mixed reaction. It's all over the shop.
Yeah.
Some people loved it, and I think that, like, honestly, I support that so much. I'm so glad you loved it. Some people really, really, really despised it and couldn't wait to tell me how much they hated it. A lot of people, I think, just sit somewhere in the middle where they're like, you know what? It's a 6 for me. It's a 5 for me. Or a lot of people, I think, are actually refusing to put a stamp on it until part 2, which I think is probably the most wise way to deal with it.
That's understandable. We're halfway through a story.
We are, and we're going to see the whole story again in the cinema next week. We've realised that if we didn't enjoy this one, we've already paid. We've said to the BBC, "Here's my good money to show me that episode again on the big screen."
I know. Boyfriend of the pod, Nick, he's at home, like back home while I'm at my parents' house. And normally we watch together. And he's a very like passive viewer of Who. So he messaged me. He was like, should I watch the episode while you're gone? And I was like, oh yeah, of course. But just so you know, we're going to watch it again in the cinema next week. And he was like, oh, then I'm probably not going to bother. I'll just watch it next week. And I was like, what an interesting life you lead, that you can just wait a whole week to watch Doctor Who.
He'll probably take it in more anyway. I don't think it's one that you can half watch with your phone. Otherwise, he will just be like, what the hell just happened? You need to give it everything.
It needs its attention.
How are you finding morning watches compared to midnight watches at the minute?
Do you know what? I am enjoying them more, because when they announced it was going to be shifted from midnight, I was so excited. I was like, oh, thank God, I hated the midnight viewings. And then when they announced it was 8 a.m, I was like, well, that's almost worse, because at least with midnight, you can have like a viewing party and people come around, have some drinks and food and stuff, and then watch it. Whereas I find, and I know you agree with me on this, that my viewing experience was like consistently impacted by the fact it was on at midnight. So I'm tired. It's the end of my day, especially like on a Friday night when you've just had the full week. And that really impacted how I viewed. So I would watch an episode and be like, oh, I don't know if I thought that was good. And then I would watch it again and be like, no, it was good. I was just tired. Whereas at least with this, it's the morning. I will say I don't wake up for it. I don't set an alarm to watch at 8, because I did that for the Robot Revolution and I was groggy while watching. But yeah, I'm very excited for this finale to air at like 7, 8 p.m, you know?
I like that it's closer to the actual airtime on BBC One now as well, because it feels like then that's the moment that spoilers are allowed, the discussion kicks off online. So if you watched it in the morning, you can kind of save your good memes and tweets for the evening, and then you're kind of part of the conversation again.
Yeah.
And the BBC goes straight out with their spoilers as well. 7:45, they're like, spoiler time, let's go.
Really?
And they're pretty quick on it. They're like, you know, the warning that changed everything, and they post the clip of Rogue, and they go like, oh, there's a reel already of like Poppy's real, and they've already put that up, and Shooty's already reposted it. So they're very quick to drop everything, I think, at 7:45, 8 p.m.
The BBC said spoiler warning.
They did, and like I guess they want the overnights as well, I guess. So they're just pushing you towards that with it. And I guess it's just less difficult for them if they don't have to wait until Tuesday. And then they're like, what do you think of that episode that was on 3 days ago? Should we give everyone a little bit of a recap? Someone actually messaged us this week and they were like, I'm not going to be able to watch the episode this week. And they're like, I'm going to rely on your recap. And I was thinking, don't rely on the recap.
Don't rely.
Like, you better skip this episode and wait.
I tried to make the recap quite good this week because I did know that was happening. So hello, dear listener, please. We hope that you enjoy. If you've missed it, we are talking about Wish World, which aired on the 24th of May. Day of yesterday. I'm recording this on Sunday. Written by Russell T Davies and directed by Alex Pillai. And there's an IMDb score of 7.6 out of 10, which is funny because I feel like no matter how divisive the reaction to each episode is or how much you and I enjoy it, they all kind of level out as a 7 point something.
I remember being told that on IMDb, anything above a 7.5 is worth watching.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that.
It's claimed that spot. I think Alex has also directed Joy to the World. I think that's his only other Doctor Who credit. I could be wrong.
Okay. Returning to the Whoniverse. Welcome back, Alex.
Welcome back, Alex. He may have done more in this season, but as far as I know, that's the only one he's done.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who hasn't seen the episode yet or couldn't quite get your head around it, here is a recap of the story.
In 1865 Bavaria, the Rani arrives on horseback to a cottage where the seventh son of the seventh son has been born. She takes the baby and transforms their mother into flowers, their brothers into ducks, and his father into an owl, telling him that this power is much older than witchcraft.
In 2025, the Doctor wakes up as John Smith with his wife Belinda and daughter Poppy. Everything seems idyllic, but doubt begins to creep in. A mysterious TV host named Conrad tells fairy tale-like stories about the Doctor and a Time Lady survivor who wields ancient power. When a woman called Ruby confronts John Smith, insisting that he's the Doctor, doubt grows in his life. Belinda reports Ruby, who runs away. He speaks with his neighbour Mel, and they look out at bone-like creatures walking the earth, taking joy in this world they live in.
John Smith works at the Unified National Insurance Team with a very familiar staff, and they watch in awe as the Rani flies up to a palace made of bone, though none of them know who she is. Back at home, Belinda's family visit, and she realises that she doesn't remember giving birth to her daughter Poppy, causing doubt in her mind about the world they live in. In the Bone Palace, the Rani, Mrs. Flood, and Conrad look over the baby from Bavaria, and we learn that he is Desiderium. And we learn that he's Desiderium, the god of wishes, whose power sustains this seemingly perfect reality.
Ruby meets Shirley and is introduced to a community of disabled people forgotten about in this world, though still with wheelchairs and medicine they can't afford. Together, they conclude that because Conrad doesn't see disabled people, they live outside his reality, and that he's the cause of this strange new world. They investigate the bone-like structures in the sky and realise that that's where Conrad is operating from.
The Doctor gets a message through his TV of his past love, Rogue, warning him that tables don't do that. He realises that all these slips in reality of mugs falling through tables aren't real, and when he tries to convince Belinda, she reports him. He's arrested, and Mrs. Flood comes to arrest her too, bringing them both to the Bone Palace. In the palace, the Rani reveals her true identity to the Doctor, but because he believes he's still John Smith, he struggles to get his head around it.
She tells him about her plan and that she's using the Vindicator to power a countdown to midnight, where the web of energy it created will amplify the power of Desiderium, along with the doubt of a Time Lord, to destroy this world she's built and unearth Omega from the underworld, the missing and most powerful Time Lord. The Doctor gets back his memories, but the Rani has trapped him outside, falling to his death. The clock strikes midnight and the world crumbles to itself, revealing the voice of Omega as the Doctor falls. He screams a warning to the Rani that his daughter Poppy is real.
Oh my god. You know, there was a point in that moment where they zoomed in and like one of the clock hands was pointing at 11 and I was like, oh my god, 11th Doctor return, here we go. And then I was like,
it's the 11th hour.
That is just how a clock works. It will have one of the Doctors on at all times.
Hey, listen. We did get Matt Smith in this episode for a half a second.
Oh, we did. He's in it. Yeah, great.
There you go. Well, before we jump into our thoughts, and I'm very excited to talk about our thoughts, we reached out to you on all our social media, and here is what some of you had to say. Over on Blue Sky, Peter said, probably could have been tighter in places, but honestly, I was palpitating the entire last 20 minutes. We will be watching the finale very closely. Ishan said, I don't think RTD will be able to tie up all those loose ends, and I'm scared it's going to be too much of a backward-looking episode of Doctor Who lore, rather than forward-looking episode on whatever his vision for Doctor Who is now. That being said, I'm on the edge of my seat to see who Poppy is and if Susan will return. Neon Nostalgic said, not sure on my final opinion since it's only the first half of the story, but love the surreal dystopia of this altered reality, very 1984. Archie Punjabi was serving so much redacted as the Rani, really hope she returns after this. I'm curious how Omega is handled and what Poppy's deal is. George said, not my favourite penultimate episode, feel like not a lot actually happened with such a large supporting cast. It seemed like nobody had the limelight for long. I'm hoping that watching it back to back with this finale will help. Definitely excited for next week though. And finally, Chris said, probably the weakest episode of RTD2. Everything just fell flat to me and nothing really happened. I can't see how everything will come together in the finale, especially with Omega being involved. But maybe it's a good thing I'm not too hyped up for the finale now.
Okay, over on Instagram, first of all, a DM I received. This person wants to remain anonymous. They said, my husband just said, as if we've got to rewatch that episode in the cinema next week. Then on Instagram, you've submitted some comments. I don't know if you wanted to remain anonymous or not, so I'll treat them all as anonymous comments. So this is a selection of quick comments you sent us on your reaction to the episode. Meh. The Rani was basically the master here. Classic RTD penultimate episode, but I didn't love this one. I hope they land the plane in part 2, but I love Archie's Rani, so compelling. Very WandaVision-like. Waste of time. Could have covered everything set up in the episode within about 10 minutes. A bizarre bit of fun, a bit Forest of the Dead. Rani was the standout. Very good setup, just don't want to have to wait a whole week. Solid 9 out of 10. Great solid setup. I love the reveal of Omega and Rani just knocked it out. References, flashbacks, and returning characters are not plot points. Google search, who is Omega? Good concept. Felt like not enough time to do everything it wanted to do. Too many questions, and I'm scared that the last episode will not have all the answers. It felt a bit like fan fiction by generated Rani's trying to free Omega, but still very enjoyable. Russell doing a bit of a moth again, wasn't it? Shout out to the set designers, 10 out of 10. And one last comment, visually gorgeous, but I felt like I've watched this story before. Next week, it's all undone.
Ooh, interesting.
Ooh.
It's interesting how, I know we were talking about how divisive it is earlier, but like, for some people, this is a 9 out of 10, like you're reading there. And for other people, this is a 1 out of 10. Like, that has been the consistent theme, I think, with episodes lately in this era, which is mad because for me, this era on the whole has been so good.
I think this is what happens when you do a very, if your brief is to really like push the boundaries of who and go places you've not gone before. And I think it feels like Russell really set this intention as well of like create discourse, like create content and create discourse and get the fans talking about these things, create hype moments. And I think that's led us into what some people are calling kind of our glup shito era, where we're kind of now just bringing back side characters to go, oh, the Rani for the sake of the Rani, and then just like, oh, Omega for the sake of Omega. And it's just kind of these, slightly fanfic moments we're entering now.
It's so mad though, because last year our critique was that we weren't getting enough returning characters. The only real returning character we got in season 1 was Sutek. Obviously, we got the Toymaker in the 60th. So between the 60th and season 1, we only had 2 returning characters, and people were saying like, I want more. And then this season, we have got a lot more. I get frustrated when I see people's complaint is they're like, oh, see, they're dipping too much in their past and relying on the past. Because I don't necessarily think that's the problem, because RTD1 brought back loads of classic characters. But it felt to me that the intention was always there that either you're not meant to, as a casual viewer, care about it. This is just an Easter egg if you're an old fan. So like when they brought back the Macro and Gridlock, it doesn't matter if you knew that they were coming back. Or you get reintroduced to them as a new character for this new era, like the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Master, and then we as new viewers care about it. Whereas in this era, when they bring back a classic character, it feels like we're just being told, oh, it's the Rani, you should care because it's the Rani. And if you don't know who the Rani is, you're not necessarily reintroduced to her in a way that you're as engaged. That's how I feel.
Yes, I think so. I think the Rani works because we've seen those episodes, because we know something of her character already. Like, okay, yeah, sure, she's the amoral scientist, but I know that because I saw some episodes and because Russell said so in a behind the scenes. And not so much because Conrad explained it clearly enough in his storytelling.
Yeah.
You get like an impression of, to be honest, I think you'd receive an impression as a casual viewer that she's a bit of a master stand-in. I think like save a couple of lines, she's not that clearly differentiated. And you could see that they resisted doing almost like a disco ball evil villain pop moment, and they like softened it a little bit into like, oh, she's going to go for a big classical music dance around the room, but it felt so mastery in that moment, and I was like,
I was rolling my eyes because our big fear last week, and I sort of want to preface before we dive too much into it, I think for me this is like a 6.5 out of 10. I actually I had fun with this episode, and for me I enjoyed this episode more than I enjoyed The Legend of Ruby Sunday. I was more engaged. I think it was a more interesting story, and I think as a solo episode, much as I do think it's a big 2-parter, I enjoyed it more as a solo episode than I did Legend Ruby Sunday. With that being said, our big concern last week was that we thought they were going to write the Rani too much like the Master, and it really did. It almost, for me, felt like maybe this episode would have been better if the reveal was that it was Missy and not the Rani in the Internet Song Contest, because it just felt like they were writing for the Master. Like the Rani bringing a disco ball into her palace just doesn't line up with anything we've known of her before, besides that one clip in Dimensions in Time from an outtake where Kate Mara is like, I thought the show was camp.
Yeah. I feel like the Rani is camp without being aware that she is. I think the Rani kind of just thinks she's fab and clever and doesn't try to play up to a campiness.
I agree.
And then it felt like this time that she was almost like leaning into what was expected of her as a campy villain. Yes. I found this episode, I mean, my initial reaction to it was extremely negative. Like when I came off the back of it, I like messaged you and I was like, that was slop. Like I really didn't enjoy that at all. And I will say I've like softened my opinion since then. Like since then I've been like really digesting how people felt about it. I still don't like it. I've been also watching other people react to it and just see like how they felt about it and like how certain beats landed. I think it's really messy, but that's also something to do with my taste in Doctor Who stories. Like one of my like worst ever Doctor Who era's moments was like towards the end of series 6, like when we had that whole like all of time is happening at once, it's constantly 5:07 p.m. and all of history is happening, and I really didn't like that. These kind of like these stories where they create new rules of time and space for that story, like everything becomes meaningless to me because I'm like like sure, but there's now any resolution you like, you know, like the stakes become so big that they become nothing. So like in this one that kind of happened for me again, where it was like it was so universe ending, so like the whole of London's gone and every companion is dead, that I don't care, because I'm like, well, they're not. Do you know what I mean? Like when the rule becomes like, oh, you know, it's a world that's been wished into existence, but as soon as the people don't believe the wish, then the fallout is so big that it rips the universe open and the underverse is exposed. I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess. Like, but in a sense that I'm like, but now anything you tell me, I'll accept. You know, if you now say like, okay, well, you know, if everyone in the world makes the same wish, the wish comes true. Okay.
I mean, that's basically the finale of series 3.
If the baby dies, everything snaps back to reality. Like if Conrad changes his mind, everything breaks again. Like whatever. Like it doesn't really mean anything to me. The same with how they talked about things like the Vindicator. There was like new rules thrown in there where it was like, oh my god, the Vindicator's created the power of like 5 billion supernovas. I was like, has it? Sure, I guess. You know, like there was just sort of things that were just added in here that there was no reason to believe.
Yeah.
That you couldn't have really seen coming. So I found it was just a bit throw everything at the screen and see what sticks. It felt like it was trying to kind of like dazzle you into loving it with just so much happening that it feels like what we normally get as a big kind of RTD sugar rush, where I initially love it and I'm like, oh my God, wow. And then I digest it and then I'm like, okay, maybe it wasn't quite as good as they thought. Yeah. This time I just didn't ever buy into it. And maybe it's a little bit because it felt like the trust was broken last series a bit, where it was like there was all this hype and Sutek is back and oh my God, where are they going to go with this? And then the resolution was so goofy and so disliked. Yeah. And it was such a reverse switch that I think it just kind of, and also the reveal of, you know, who is Ruby's mother. And I think that I think for me has sapped a lot of the excitement out of this series because it feels like we're probably just going to end it with and everything went back to normal. Yeah,
I get that. I hope, like, for you and for everyone, it doesn't sap the joy out of the series. I understand it's sapping the joy out of the finale, like the trust being broken finale, because I do think this series overall, for me at least, has been better than the last one. For me personally, I actually don't mind the WandaVision next story. I do think that Russell's second era has relied a bit too heavily on, it seems like, copying Marvel tropes and doing Marvel. That definitely was apparent for me with like the snap with Thanos and then the dusting of Sutek last season. But I quite liked the WandaVision next story. It made me engage. Like I think the way that it was done may be wrong, is that we as the audience almost should open the episode not knowing about the Rani and just see the Doctor and Belinda in this life and have to try and work out for ourselves what's going on as well. Whereas because we know what's going on, we're just waiting for it to be undone, if that makes sense, rather than being engaged and thinking, oh goodness, is the Doctor going to be trapped here? Is this the reality now? What's going on with Ruby? Like, However, I was engaged. I did like it. I know that one of the big complaints of the episode is how on the nose Conrad's biases are in the world he's created. So Mel being like, well, I'm a single woman with no parents, so I'll be sat inside contemplating, and women grow up and they do good at us, and you can't be a gay, you little word I'm not going to say on the podcast. But I kind of feel like much as that's like super overt in this episode, it doesn't necessarily bother me, because in this world where Conrad is trying to like oversimplify everything into his quote unquote perfect world, everyone is constantly overacting. Everyone's like, good morning, darling. Oh, it is a beautiful day. Let's look at this gorgeous sun. So because everyone is always so heightened, it didn't flash out to me in such a bad way as I know that other people had read it.
Yeah. I think it would have been more effective if this whole series, the Rani's plan, had already been in effect, or even the last 2 series, and there were already things about the universe that we found to be weird, and they really could have then pulled off a really nice reveal of, I wanted you to find it weird. There were tells. I wanted you to doubt, because this world isn't right. This world is broken. And I've been letting through little things that you've picked up as, you know, you, the audience, continuity errors, that those are like glitches in my wish. Those are glitches in my reality. And then it all comes crumbling down and we realize like what's really been going on. But because we start the episode entering what is clearly like a parallel world, yes, we're kind of waiting for everyone to wake up, or for the reveal. And I don't know. I understand as well what they were going for with like everyone having like really heightened reactions and everyone being like a bit thick and just being like, "Good morning, darling. How are you doing?" And but it just wasn't. It wasn't compelling to me. I think what worked about WandaVision was they acted in keeping with like the era of television they were meant to be on.
Yeah.
So it was a sitcom.
Yeah.
And then there'd be a moment where like suddenly it took a really dark twist and someone's choking to death. And it was like,
I guess they tried to do that with the gay thing, but it didn't read in the same way.
It just didn't quite work. And also it felt like it's been done so well and so famously by WandaVision, and also 5 years ago now, that it felt just like, as well, like I think trying to link back to like a 50s style where WandaVision very much famously kicked off with like a 50s era. It felt too similar to be original.
That's fair.
So I think that kind of undermined it a bit. I think I understood the story. I think the story, it works. Like it holds together. I do have big questions that might well be answered in the next episode, but I'm almost like dubious that certain things will get answered.
Right.
I think the baby made sense to me. It felt like the Rani had somehow found out about this piece of mythology, right? And decided like, look, myth is real in this world. Let me go back and find the baby that grants wishes, and does. And then herself becomes part of that mythology and plays almost a bit of a role of like the evil witch who stole the baby and turned people into flowers and turned the children into ducks, and like almost becomes part of like, do I mean like a Brothers Grimm story? Is that what I mean? I think I do.
Yeah.
But like a fairy tale, like she becomes part of her own little fairy tale there.
Yeah.
And she's even got like the hood to like go with that aesthetic, and it all like works quite well. And the baby is, they say it's a fountainhead of power from beyond the universe. And in the wish world, he sustains the entire world. And all he does is chuckle, and he chuckles to giggle.
Ha 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 ha.
He is an ancient power that has been awoken due to the Doctor's meddling at the edge of the universe. Okay, fine. That's all right. Conrad's role I find a little bit complex. Like why Conrad is being instructed to read the story, why that story is called Doctor Who. I assume this is to do with the Rani trying to prompt the Doctor to break out.
Yeah,
of
she wants his doubt, and they're
reality.
tracking how much he doubts throughout the day.
Yes. But even when he's kind of told by Ruby, "You're the Doctor, by the way," he's like, "No, I'm not." And so I'm like, he's just hearing these background stories and it means like absolutely nothing to him. But it does eventually come back, of course. I don't know what Conrad thinks he is doing in this. I guess he's being told by Mrs. Flood, like, you're helping people, like by reading these stories, you're making the world better out there.
I think this is what I'm struggling the most with Conrad in this, is I don't really know why they chose him, because Hamish actually sent us a voice note after Lucky Day where he was sort of saying to us, like, because a big thing we were talking about is, does Conrad believe in the aliens and the Doctor? Does he not? It's really weird. And he was saying about how he clearly does believe that they're aliens and clearly does know it. But when he's using his public persona, he's trying to like gain power and sway by people by triggering them into believing what he wants them to believe. And if he's like, see, look, these are masks, he's only doing it when the cameras are on. So
Yeah.
I understand this as well, where Conrad does believe in all of this stuff. I don't understand why the Rani cares. I don't understand why the Rani wants Conrad. It feels like a lot of times in this episode, they do one too many things. So, okay, fine. Desiderium creates the wish world and they need the Doctor's doubt to crumble that world. Okay, fine. Maybe don't add the Vindicate. That's one too many things. Okay, you want Conrad here to build this world and use as an engine. Okay, why is Mrs. Flood there as a spare part? Why don't you just have the Rani doing this to him? It feels like they almost had one too many elements to this whole episode. And I feel like with Conrad, we've not been explained well enough as the audience why Mrs. Flood or the Rani care that Conrad is the one telling this story. I guess they just want someone to be like the public facing front of this. And clearly the Rani doesn't want anyone to know who she is because nobody does know who she is and you're not allowed to ask. But maybe I just really don't like Conrad. I just don't care enough about him. I guess it makes the link to Ruby and why she knows him and remembers him, but I don't know if that's like a strong enough link.
They say to him, that's why the mistress chose you, the boy who wants the world to be better, a wish from the heart. So it sounds like his desire for the world to be different is so strong that he is a useful target for them because he's helping sustain the false reality and he's willing to do these things. And also, I guess, because he's kind of doomed, like in his prison cell at the point they rescue him, he has no future. The Doctor just told him, like, you're going to die here. So he's like, yeah, sure, I guess I'll come with your plan if that's the only other option. And I guess it makes him important too. So, I mean, they say that to him, but I guess they're thinking like, actually, you're someone we can manipulate and you're useful for us.
Yeah.
I do find it, I do find it confusing what Conrad's role or motivation is in this. I guess we'll find out more next time. But I also, this is maybe unfair. I don't really enjoy Conrad's performance.
I don't either. I'm so sorry.
Him. I find him like detestable. I understand he's also meant to be dislikable, but I think on the TV when he's reading these stories, I just don't think he's giving very much for me.
Yeah.
Like it just wasn't powerful enough of a storyteller to really carry like that background narrative.
It's hard to not compare it to things that have been on Doctor Who in the past. When you think about like how John Sims' Master was like a public facing front of this new world that he was trying to create, and he was so engaging in the way that he would perform.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think we get that with Conrad's performance. I'm so sorry, Jenna.
But I don't think so.
I feel like I would much rather be watching Anita Dobson on that chair telling a little story like CBeebies really creepy, you don't trust her.
Yes.
And that for me would be doing more than what we're getting with Conrad. But I understand that like I think that it's meant to show that the Rani just doesn't really care about humanity, and Conrad has his biases, and I think that's where you show the cracks in the world. It also made me laugh though, because we have that bit about the homophobia where he doesn't believe that gay people exist apparently, and Ibrahim's like, you're a man, you can't love a man. I love that Kate then says about how the Rani's beautiful, and it's like, well, I guess Conrad's all right with the lesbians. Like Conrad's fine.
It's fine with lesbians, just not gays.
It also seems like Ibrahim and Kate are each other's beards.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yes, I think it almost just should have been a storyteller with a bit more charisma, and maybe I would have just bought into it a little bit more. I'd be like, okay, that's why they chose him.
Yeah.
He's a compelling and persuasive speaker. That makes sense. And that's why he has the following he has in his original world, is because he is persuasive, he is charismatic, but I don't think that really came across for me.
No, I don't feel so.
Speaking of unit, Susan Triad, I love that.
Oh, I love she came back.
Because her arc is kind of done. Like her mystery was resolved. And so now she's just around. And I kind of think that's funny to me. That's really funny. So when she's back in her Devil's Cord tea lady costume and she turns up and she's like offering wafers and the rest of it, she's like, if you need anything else, just give me a shout. And she's like, okay, so no one's going to be shouting around here, thanks. But there's that line after the slip and the mug smashes, and Susan Triad's like, oh, many a slip twixt cup and lip, as they say. And I'm like, as they say what? As they say what?
Oh,
many a
God.
slip twixt cup and lip, as they say. I found that very funny.
I love that she came back. I also love that at the end of Empire of Death, when she was kind of being offered a job at UNIT, she was like, I'll just make the tea. Like, that's literally the last thing she said in Empire of Death, and now she's here making the tea. I just love that she's back. And like you said, I'm glad they're not trying to, and I hope they don't try to, interweave her into this mystery. She is just like a fun comedy relief character that we're getting on the side. And I was happy to see her. I loved seeing her in her uniform. It's just funny to me that we had the unified national insurance team. I thought that was just so silly.
That was funny.
Yeah. And
it was funny.
It's interesting to see UNIT in that context, I guess.
Yes, it is. Yeah. They put the Vlinks in a box. Did you notice? That was how they just got rid of the Vlinks.
No, I didn't.
It was just in a box. It was just like, do not open. And it was just a massive plywood box.
Oh, God. We thought when we were watching all the photos come out of this episode that those weird, like, computer multiple eye creatures in the Rani's Bone Palace was going to be the Vlinks. I'm really glad it wasn't, because those were some of my favorite things introduced in this episode. I loved those when they were like 996, 99989, and like they don't really see and they have the black goo coming out their hands. I thought that was they're like measuring the doubt that's coming out of the world. I thought they were really great designs, really creepy.
They were.
Obviously they weren't in it much, but I really liked their inclusion.
Yes, I so agree. They don't really have like an easy name. They were called clone type classiforms, basic seeker function animals. They were really cool. And I love that they were like kind of half typing, half like almost like connected like through oil or something. Mm-hmm. They looked awesome. I loved those, and I would happily see those back. That's the kind of like original build on what the Rani is and has. Like, I like the idea that she just carries them around or knows where to get them, because she's obviously got like has had a whole world enslaved before. So this is probably the kind of sidekick or robot that she's got around helping her out.
I know. I want them to mention her planet, because I think that is the coolest thing about the Rani, that she like has a planet and created creatures from this. And I hope we find out more. I hope we get reintroduced, at least, to the lore that we know, if you've seen her in Classic Who, where basically she was kicked out and exiled from Gallifrey because she was creating experiments, but she thought was trying to help the Time Lords. But they were, amoral experimentations on people. So she got exiled. So she created her own planet with her own life. And I'm like, that's cool. Talk about that. Like, this isn't the first time she's created a world.
Yeah, something else may be missing for me, and I think this is a side effect of bringing back Last of the Time Lords. And again, I blame Chibnall for deleting the Time Lords for a second time, and I really think you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But where's the Rani been? Like, what did she do during the Time War? Or
maybe she was just on a planet the whole time.
Or did she come back the last time Gallifrey came back and got off-world before the Master destroyed it? Like, for me, there's a missing conversation at the minute between the Rani and the Doctor, which is important, which is like, if she's planning to create a new Gallifrey, you need to talk about the fact Gallifrey's gone. That there has to be some reference to the fact of like, it's disgusting. Like, our people were the most advanced in the universe. We were, the most elite rulers of all things. And now we're gone again.
And now they're all Cybermen, I guess.
Yeah, but or they're just dead, I guess, because there was that death particle that killed all the Cybermen too, so they're all gone.
I forgot about that.
But there needs to be, I think, something there about that. If you're going to call yourself like Last of the Time Lords, I'm the Last of the Time Lords, that keeps coming up. And then I think you need to talk about Gallifrey being gone. Anyway, it'll probably come up in the next episode. Ultimately, if her master plan is to bring back Omega, to bring back a new Gallifrey, I'm like, go on, have a go. Like, I'm happy with that. I've asked for them back for a long time. I
know we're not talking about this episode, but the Cyber Masters came back. They were in the power of the Doctor in the train. They didn't all get killed. Oh, yeah. So somewhere in this universe, there are like zombie Time Lords that can still regenerate, but they're Cybermen, and they just exist in this world.
Yeah, they're quite lethal. Like, I thought they were meant to be like a massive existential threat, so none of them should have really survived. It felt like the Master created some extras, maybe.
Who knows? I don't know. I want to touch on, because we've mentioned about Conrad's biases and how that shows itself in the world. I'd like to touch on the bias he has towards disabled people and how they're not seen in this world, because I'm not 100% sure how I sit on this as a plot point. And I think that's because it doesn't happen in a vacuum of this episode. Specifically, I'm talking about Ruth Madley and her character in this, because to my eyes, and I have seen other people talk about this as well, it feels like every time she's in an episode, and I've written a list here, every single time she's in an episode, her disability is used as some kind of plot point. And that frustrates me because it just feels like, at least for her, and in this episode they're doing it with other people, they are constantly using Shirley's disability to further the plot, more so than I think they're developing her character beyond just anyone else that works at UNIT.
Yeah, I also don't know how I feel about this completely. It's a really interesting depiction in this episode to say we sit on the fringes of society so we can already see the world for what it is. Yeah. And Conrad has forgotten we even exist, and so we just don't even fit into this template for him. Like, we don't have any role for him in this world. Is interesting. But I feel like they've defined Shirley's character really strongly by her disability, and I don't know how I feel about that. Speaking of the disabled people and them living on the fringes of society, there was an extra this week who appeared in Who, and that was my sister. Yes! Is actually in Doctor Who this week, and so we were on the lookout for her, and we did spot her in the background. So someone with my sister's face is canonically in the world of Doctor Who, and she appeared with her crutches in the background, with her hot pink crutches in the background. And I was going to say, I was like, how's that going to work that, you're in this camp and you've got these like hot pink crutches? But that is explained that, it'll be a relic of the real world that she has those. And that's why they're available to her. Anyway, I thought that was extremely funny that my sister is now canonically in the world of Who.
I love it. I love how much she was in Unleashed as well. She just kept popping up in Unleashed.
Yeah, she's like very clearly in Unleashed.
Yeah.
And yeah, as she said, like Ruth Madley is an absolute babe and such a sweetheart and deeply genuine, and really I think does care very much about representation and also about all these actors having a good experience on set as well. Yeah, that also really comes off in the Unleashed as well. Like, you can hear them talk quite a lot about access coordinators and how much they've really worked hard to make sure that was a positive experience for everyone.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm really glad, and like I was saying before, Ruth Madley just seems incredible. So I am very excited to see where she goes in the War Between.
Yes. And I think the War Between will give us a lot more space to flesh out that character.
Yeah. Talking about the camp, I really liked how Ruby was introduced to this group and how she fits in, because on paper, other than her link to Conrad, that she knew him before, everyone in UNIT knew him before, and everyone in UNIT knows how terrible it is. So I don't think that's a strong enough link to why she sees the world for what it is and sees the cracks. What I really like is the subtle callback to 73 Yards, where that's not the reason that she can see the world. The reason is because she's lived through this year already. She knows what the year 2025 is like, and you get that really quick through 73 Yards. And you're like, oh, that's why you can see the world, because you've lived through this before, and you're the only one on Earth that has lived through this before. So you know what it is. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yes.
And also, in every universe, your mum just fucking hates you. That was so funny to me that I'm like, every time your mum just hates you.
You keep getting abandoned. I also wondered, where is Ruby's real mum in this episode? It feels like, and this is one more little complaint from me.
One more.
With there being so much significance around Ruby's life being incomplete without her mother, that now that she has found her birth mum, at least, she obviously had Carla already as her adopted mum, but her birth mother is now back in the picture, and we know that she's there because we saw her in Lucky Day, but she just doesn't really appear at all in this story.
Yeah.
And that would be the obvious next place for her to go without, if she's rejected by Carla and Cherry, then it feels like that'd be the obvious next place to be, would be to go back to her mother. But she's not in this story, and I don't know if that's intentional.
I think we will be getting a lot of people next week. I know I haven't looked over the whole cast list, but I know that we're getting Rose Noble back next week. I can't help but think in this, I'm like, 14 is just in Donna's house here. 14 is just somewhere here with his TARDIS.
He's just at home not helping.
Yeah.
He is just elsewhere.
I like
he might have been coupled up with someone. Who knows?
Sylvia.
There we go.
There you go.
At last.
I in my head, he either tripped on a brick and died, like Russell said, or he flew off on his TARDIS and never came back. Like that. I don't think that he's on Earth in this. Russell did tease that we would be getting lots of ties brought together in the reality war in a Stolen Earth-esque way. He actually said like a Stolen Earth-esque way. I do wonder whether that means returning characters in the series that we aren't expecting to come back, like Donna, like 14.
Yes, we'll see. I mean, honestly, I'd accept a bit of fan service. There's a lot of characters they could bring back who I'd like to see in it. Someone said this week it's funny, and it's like a thing in Doctor Who, and I agree with this take, that when an era is closed and a showrunner's moved on, we kind of accept that we don't see those companions or doctors ever again.
Yeah.
Like, unless it's like a really special episode. But particularly the companions, a lot of them now we know exist on Earth and are around. And I really see that as a missed opportunity, because it does help, I think, create a sense of a grounded shared universe between eras if companions can keep going and keep interacting with the story.
Yeah.
I don't think they all have to be tied by unit. I don't think they all need to be unit part-timers, but I think it would be great every now and then that we check in on someone, or the Doctor enlists an old friend to come and help in a story. I don't think it has to be this. They've explained it, I think, through like the lonely Doctor refusing to accept that he has friends and family on Earth, and he's not good at goodbyes, and so when he says goodbye, he says goodbye forever. I think that's ridiculous, and I think he should just be willing to drop in on Dan Lewis and be like, Dan Lewis, like,
bring your frying pan.
Can I persuade you? Yeah, bring your frying pan. We could use your frying pan this week. We need to go bash Conrad.
Well, this is why I really liked the companion support group at the end of Jodie's era, because it brought back all these sort of companions through classic eras and stuff who've never really returned to the show up until that point. Like Mel, for example, like that was Mel being reintroduced to the universe, and now look at the role she's got within Unit. And I wish we had Martha. I mean, you know me. I'm never going to stop tooting the old Martha back train, but I wish we'd had a modern companion in there as well. I know we did have the characters from Jodie's era, because I agree with you that I feel like popping up every so often, even if it's just a little bit of fan service, would be something that I love. I don't see us getting characters like Rose or Martha or Donna back necessarily next week. Maybe Donna, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a missed opportunity. Do you know what was a gag for me in this episode is Rogue's cameo. That did not leak for me. I did not see that coming. Did it look like he was on a green screen in New York? Yes, it did. Do we know how he sent the message? No, we don't. Do we know why he sent it? No, we don't. Do we know how he knows the Doctor's reality is broken? No, we don't. But I was happy to see him.
Yeah, I would have preferred him to be like almost in the dark somewhere. And then I could believe, like, okay, he's found a device or something he can use. But it didn't feel like he was giving a telepathic message as much as a recording, which didn't really make sense in that he was clearly, like, in the smoky depths of actual hell. So I was like, huh. And then also, like, he's like, oh, they're coming. I've got to be quick. And I was like, who's coming? What? Demons?
The Hellions. The Hellions.
Where are you?
The goats.
Where the hell are you?
I don't know.
But the thing that a few people pointed out, and I see this is when he's like, I miss you. Well, more than that, I love you. I was like, you love him?
Listen,
love him?
If there's one thing about the gays, they fall fast and hard, all right? They fall fast and hard.
I was like, one night.
It was a good night.
It was a good night.
I don't know. I mean, he was willing to sacrifice himself for it, so I don't know. Like, the amount of people that have sacrificed themselves for the Doctor, and like, sure, you love him, okay. But then we also get that little, it's very 2008 Rose, we get that flash of Susan again before him. And again, that's a case of, like, I think one too many things. It's interesting, because there's a lot of discourse as to whether or not Susan will actually be in the next episode, or whether she's trying to be set up for the potential Series 3. If she is in the next episode, it's now going to be mad, because the Doctor, we've got this whole Last Time Lord thing, but there's the Doctor, there's 2 Ranis, there's Susan, there's Omega. That's 5 different bodies of Time Lords in this story. Yeah. And hey, Misty was at the premiere, so chuck her in too.
Yeah. There was a question of whether if she is going to come back, she's going to regenerate to allow the character of Susan to go on.
I've been saying for years, regenerate into Lydia West.
Well, yes, that would be nice. But then someone said, actually, is the character of Susan less special if it's not Carol Ann Ford? And
Very
should
fair.
you do that? Because, and I hadn't actually really thought about this before. I was like, oh no, they should let like Susan go on if she's a Time Lord. And then I thought about it and I was like, does it need to be Susan who goes on as another character? Maybe it would be nice to have some reunion at some point, but does it need to
move
be
on.
Susan carrying on not as Carol Ann Ford? I'm like, well, should
introduce new Time Lords.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'd rather do. So when I hear the Rani's like thinking of making more Time Lords, I'm like, well, finally.
Oh God, she's going to, like we said last week, she's going to be making new Time Lords, and then they're going to be the Space Baby.
Yeah, probably is what Space Babies is. They'll probably tell out all the Space Babies are actually Time
we
babies.
haven't really talked about Poppy, because at the end the Doctor shouts like, don't you know I have a daughter? She's real. Do you know what you've done? Like, I do think, I wrote at the end of my notes, I was saying I think Poppy will either be Susan's mum, potentially the fugitive Doctor, or the Timeless Child.
Yes. I was going to say, what are your theories for next week? And I think there's some link there. The obvious one feels like Poppy is now going to be Susan's mother somehow.
Especially because we had that weird line in The Devil's Call where the doctor was like, well, I haven't had kids yet.
Yeah, which I didn't like.
I didn't like
because I always really liked it when, like, in The Doctor's Daughter as an episode, I thought that characterization was perfect. Like, he was like, there is a hole in my heart that will just never heal because of the family I lost, because of the Time War.
And in my head, I still think that to be true.
I think it's richer as well. Like, there was a family we never saw that he was deeply in love with, you know, whoever it was that he lost, and had kids that he loved and a brother he loved, and that all those people died and they're gone, and that's kind of the void inside him somewhere.
Yeah.
But then we have this other angle that we've consistently gone for, which is that like the Time Lords can't come back because they're now evil because of the Time War. So if you bring back kind of the Time Lords as it were as the end, then that's also a big universe risking thing that can never happen. Whereas I've always wanted the in-between, which would be that Chibnall hadn't deleted the Time Lords the second time, and there had been some kind of rebellion on Gallifrey where they had kind of overturned the old system, maybe even removed the Time Lord system, kind of collapsed that hierarchy.
They're now like
together.
Gallifreyans.
And they're just Gallifreyans. Like, yes, the Time Lords are gone, but the Gallifreyans are still here. And they have a new society and a new set of values, and they maybe even model themselves after the Doctor.
Maybe that's where we're going with Poppy and the Space Babes, because we know there is something wrong with her, because like when everyone's like, oh, Poppy, May 24th, isn't that amazing? And she's like, no! So like she clearly is somewhat like sentient in all this. So maybe that's where we're going. Maybe we're going to get your pitch storyline the whole time of the revival of a new era of the Time Lords.
I hope so, because I think it's rich. And I think there's so much to be said even for that journey where the Time Lords restructure their society. But I always liked the idea that, or even in the version where the Master has destroyed Gallifrey, that the Time Lords, or a number of Gallifreyans at least, escaped the planet before that point, and they've been rebuilding society on their own somewhere else, because I don't want to get too deep into it because I feel quite passionate on this topic. But I like the idea that they maybe like managed to extract parts of their technology and take things with them, but that on the whole, the Time Lords no longer even know how their own technology works because it's so advanced, it feels like magic. It's like
that's how I think you use relics correctly.
It's like if you and I and our friends were the last survivors of the human race, we wouldn't know how to build AI. We wouldn't know how to build an oven. Like,
it's
we'd
true.
be like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, but you're so right with that. And I feel like that is exactly what they're trying to do with the relics of the old world with the people in the camp, where they're like, oh, we have this magical piece of tech. And Ruby's like, oh, it feels so familiar. And I feel like you can then kind of like do that, but with Time Lords, where they're like, this is the Arc of Infinity. And they're like, what's this? And they're like, no clue. But somebody did. Somebody knew. Yeah. One thing, talking about making things, bringing things to the forefront and making things real again. Dimensions in Time is bloody canon, baby. It is.
It's happened.
None. So we get these flashbacks to the Rani's fate. And also, it's a fair comment in this. There's a lot of flashbacks. We get a lot of flashbacks in this episode.
They love a flashback.
But we get, when the Rani's introducing herself to the Doctor, these flashbacks of Kate Mara's Rani. And there's one from the Mark of the Rani and one from the Time of the Rani. And then one from Dimensions in Time, the 1993 Children Need spin-off, where guess what? Doctor Who meets EastEnders. So canonically, the Doctor has met Pat Butcher.
And it's a shared universe.
And it's a shared
EastEnders and Doctor Who. It's a shared Whoniverse now. EastEnders is an extension of. They should start doing the at the start of EastEnders episodes with Whoniverse.
Well, you know, there's that episode that we found of EastEnders where Stacey's showing Bradley the Doctor Who exhibition. That is now equivalent to the Doctor meeting the fans in Lux.
Yes. Yes.
It's so funny to me. And I know people hate it. I know they do, but I love it. I think it's so funny. I think it's so silly. I love that. I think that's so funny.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. There's a few really interesting theories for next week. One was that the Rani actually doesn't like the gods and is looking to reset the universe via Omega and put things back to normal, and that actually might like seal some of the cracks that the Doctor opened.
Yeah.
Which is a resolution I would accept, because I think the gods run has been fine. There's been some that have even been great, but I think we need to wrap it up. I do think we need to
move on from this era.
I do not want this to be a permanent open door for more gods and more giggles to come back at any time. I don't want the toy maker back. I'm really sorry, but I'm done with it. I think I'd like now for there to be smaller scale villains through Who generally, and it to go back to sci-fi. I think this has been a fun dip into fantasy. Daleks, Cybermen, humans being the threat, I think is to me more fun than world-ending, universe-ending gods, because the stakes are too big to be interesting for me.
Yeah.
So I'd rather see more small-scale stories.
I'm curious to see in the next part where they go with Omega, because I like the idea that Sutek wasn't the one who waits, it's Omega, and Sutek was just bigging himself up to be the biggest and the baddest, but it's not, it's Omega. I also like the idea of Omega being like, I'm not a god. I'm just a really fucking powerful Time Lord. And all of your puny little gods are silly. And I would like the idea if that was the Rani's plan along, because I don't like that the Rani's leaning into the gods. That doesn't feel very like true to her character. And the idea that if they are bringing Omega back and he's here to be like, these puny people that call themselves gods, they're literally just weirdos. Look at me, look what I can do. I will say though, however, I'm interested because we know in the lore the Doctor has built up now that Tecteun was one that created the Time Lords and that the Doctor was the first Time Lord. So with the Rani saying that Omega is the first Time Lord who created the Time Lords, I'm curious to see whether they are just going to skip by the Timeless Child in that aspect, because that is how Omega was in Classic. Or maybe Rani just doesn't know, or are they just going to ignore the whole thing? I think there's a lot of questions I have going into the finale.
There's a scenario here, if they're clever with it, where they don't bring back Omega. That's recognized to be a big threat. Maybe even the Rani goes like, actually, Doctor, can you help me out here? This is not what I thought it would be. I can see that this guy's crazy.
Yeah.
And this is not going to end well for us. But clues on to, hang on, your DNA is unique. And actually, or maybe that's how the Doctor persuades the Rani not to release Omega, is like, if you are looking for Time Lord DNA,
baby,
trust me, mine's special.
Yeah.
And that could be the way that ends.
And that links to Poppy being the Timeless Child going through whatever portal it is to become the first Doctor.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know. Well, one thing we're forgetting about as well, are we getting a regeneration next week?
God, you know what I'm now realizing as well, with that conversation between the Rani and Mrs. Flood, where Mrs. Flood says to the Rani, well, in a way, you're my child, because it could be said you sprung from my loins. And then the Doctor is saying, Poppy's my child, she's real. Is that meant to be a parallel for Poppy is a Doctor?
I truly don't know. And I also think, I made this note earlier, I think the whole Poppy thing works better if it was Ruby. I do think there's whispers and rumours that they didn't know whether it was going to be Ruby or not in this series. And I think that the full rounded story of it being Ruby and Poppy rather than being Belinda and Poppy would work better. But I definitely think that what they're leaning into is that Poppy is important and Poppy means something. And we know that in the same way that, this is interesting actually, in the same way that 10-2 in The Stolen Earth was bleeding through the heartbeat that Donna kept hearing, bleeding through time until it happened. And then when you meet 10-2, he was like, oh, that was me. I'm such a big space-time event. I was rippling through time. That Belinda seeing Poppy in The Story in the Engine could have been Poppy being such a big space-time event that she was rippling through time in the same way, because she is something as big as the Doctor, if not the Doctor.
Yes. I'm interested to see where they go with it. I don't think everyone needs to be related. Everyone needs to be a child or a son or something of someone. They've obviously gone hard in this 2-series arc on babies, families, links,
legacies.
Last of the Time Lords, legacies. So I think it's kind of inevitable that there's going to be some weird lines between people, and maybe even a reframing of Ruby's story and who Ruby's mother really is. I don't know. It could go that big. It might not.
Yeah.
But maybe we're going to finally get an answer to the snow question. Maybe not.
I hope. I doubt it, but maybe not. One thing I'm wondering, I don't know how true. This is just literally me. There's no truth to this. This is just me thinking. Carol Ann Ford said that she got invited to come on to season 2 when Russell met her at the premiere for The Star Beast. But we know for a fact that they were filming the Interstellar Song Contest and episodes within the middle of this era during the 60th anniversary. I think they were filming Lucky Day even during the 60th anniversary. So they were already filming season 2. I also think it's quite widely known they've recently done some reshoots for season 2. Do you think that Carol Ann Ford was a last minute addition where, if they are choosing to do a regeneration, I don't know if that's what they filmed, I don't know what, that they added her to this? Because she is so copy paste inserted into this story. She hasn't spoken to any characters. She hasn't had any interactions with people as of yet. Do you think she was a last minute addition to this story to help with something in the reality war?
Yes,
I think it's very possible.
It could be. I think there's been a lot of last minute changes and rewrites. I think Ruby's role is different to what it used to be. I think that they've plausibly looking at certain story points and beats, I think that there's a lot that you could easily swap in Ruby instead of Belinda, and it would still make sense or even be stronger. I think that things have definitely been changed late. I think, yes, the reshoots are suspicious and I'm interested to see what happens in the cinema next week. And yeah, I mean, even things like that, right? Like where Carol Ann Ford says, I never met Russell until very recently. And I'm like, oh, weird. And then he like said to me at the premiere, do you want to be in Doctor Who? Do you want to come back? And I was like, that's a weird place and time to be asked to come back.
I know.
And then, Varador also saying like, I had like a matter of weeks to prepare for the role, and I was kind of just offered it on the spot. It wasn't even an audition. It was just the job.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's weird. Given like normally they go through like, supposedly like hundreds of potential actors.
This is what I find really weird, because Russell has said like, oh, we auditioned loads of people for Belinda, loads, and then we suddenly realised we had her already. But then not making, like, Mundy Flynn and Belinda are two very different characters, and you feel like they would want to make her audition. And listen, Varys has done an amazing job. I'm not saying she should have had to audition, but like, if they are auditioning all these people for a role and then they just decide they're going to offer it to someone who's been in an episode playing a very different character, that does feel odd to me. I feel like stuff is happening behind the scenes that obviously we as the public aren't meant to know about, and I'm curious to see what this series would have looked like if certain things might not have happened.
Yes. I want the shooting script story one day so bad, and I want it to be. I want the true inside story. I don't know if we're ever going to get it.
No.
I want the messy, true inside story. Someone's got to spill it.
Someone's going to spill it at some point. An NDA will expire, and then Millie Gibson will go on late and live or something. I don't know. Yeah. Well, we're not very far away from the cinema and the reality world, but before then, I do have a little game for you.
Oh, I love a little game. Go on.
A little game called Camp or Damn! Now, for anyone who hasn't listened to Hurtle before, we like to play a little game called Camp or Damp, where we look back on moments in the episode and say whether they are camp or whether they are damp. Alasdair, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Men can't like men. Camp or damp. Boys aren't allowed to like boys.
Damp. I found that just like it was another one of like these political inserts that just like smacks you over the head and you're like, yep, got it, understood, I agree,
wet fish.
Sure. Yeah, I was like, I don't even need to say that I agree that's a good point to make, like, but it's not a point that was in any way embedded in a way that's gonna change minds and hearts. It was just thrown in there like, what do you mean a man's beautiful? Police! I was like, okay, sure. Okay.
Constable Flood, camp or damp?
Constable Flood, camp, actually. And actually, you know what I am actually starting to really enjoy is the idea that actually Mrs. Flood just really enjoys costume and dress up and just really enjoys playing certain characters. Beyond Disguise is just really getting into role in a way that the other Rani doesn't.
Yeah.
And this is just something they like doing. It's just this like, right, go on, you can go play police now. It's like, yes!
Yes! Well, somebody said that she keeps dressing up as other companions because the big fluffy coat is very Romana. The outfit she was wearing in Empire Death is very emblematic of Clara. And then this police outfit is like Amy. And it's like she just like, and you know how the original Rani dressed up as Mel? People were saying that it's just her dressing up as lots of different companions.
Yeah, or indeed it could have been PC Yazkan.
PC Yazkan, could have been PC Yazkan. And finally, drowning in a universe of breast milk, camp or damp?
Drowning in the universe of breast milk is quite funny. Yeah, the baby is scary. Is it camp or damp? Yeah. Drowning in a universe of breast milk.
I just like they're like, well, we have to guide this baby because otherwise we'd be drowning in a universe of breast milk. Because it's true, like if a baby can wish anything it wants into existence, that's probably what you'd wish.
Yeah, fine, camp.
Silly camp.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, lovely listener, for joining us in this episode of Wholala. We are very, very interested to hear what you think. Please do. Send us any voice notes. You can email us, wholalapod@gmail.com, or reach out to us on all of our social media and let us know what are your theories for the reality world and the finale of season 2. And as of current, there's been lots of rumours and whispers, but I'm not going to say anything until the BBC officially announce it. The last announced season of Doctor Who. I don't actually believe Doctor Who will go away, but... What do you think that's going to happen next week? You can reach out to us on all of our social media. We're at Wholapod everywhere. We're on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, and TikTok. Email us, wholalapod@gmail.com. And you can also rewatch old episodes of the podcast on our YouTube channel, including our interview with the fans from Lux.
Yes, you can. If you enjoyed this week's episode, you can rate us 5 stars. We really do appreciate it, particularly on Apple, where for some reason we're lagging. We're doing well on Spotify, don't bother. You can follow us as well so you get notified when new episodes drop. You can buy us a coffee, ko-fi coffee, and you can, of course, share the podcast on your story with a friend. That also really helps the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much. We hope you enjoy the reality war, and we will see you next week for the finale.
See you next week, and we'll see you if you are going to be in a central London view. We'll see you there.